Hi all, welcome back. So in this series, I'm going to create an Angular PrimeNG app with authentication. Okay. So mainly I'm covering a login page with the reactive form and its validation, register form with the reactive form and its validation. And also I'm going to cover the CanActivate guards and also some custom validator as well. So I will show a demo on this. So first you can see I'm using a routing functionality here. I have a login URL and there will be email, password, sign in is disabled by default. So there will be validation also. By default, you can see email is required, password is required, and also if I add an invalid email, it will show email should be invalid. So if user is not registered, we can click and the URL will be changed to register and it will ask for full name, email, password and confirm password. Here you can see here also validation is there. So other than the required validation, I have added a custom validator for the password and confirm password to be same. So if I add 1, 2, 3, 4 here, and if I'm not adding the same password, I have added a custom validator and message which is password should match. Okay. So once I type test data, test email, password 1, 2, 3, 4, and the register button will be enabled. Once it is registered, I have implemented a toaster using PrimeNG, and you can log in gmail.com and I'm adding the password. The sign in is registered. It is redirecting. So the auth can activate guard is also enabled, so user won't be able to navigate to the home page without login. So added a sign out. So it is redirecting to the login again. For an Angular application, first you have to install Node.js in your machine. For that, you can go to the Node.js website and download the latest LTS version. So the LTS version here is 18.18.0. So click on it, then it will get downloaded. Then you can go to the download folder and double click on it. So then click on next until it has been finished. Now the Node.js installation is finished. Now you can check the Node.js version using the terminal. So open a terminal and give the command node -v. So it will show the Node.js version, and along with Node.js, you will be able to see Node Package Manager as well. For that, you can give the command npm -v. So the next step is install Angular CLI globally using the npm Node Package Manager. Okay. So for that, you have to give the command npm install -g for globally installing Angular CLI. And you have to give the package name, that is Angular/CLI. So it will install the latest version of Angular CLI globally in your machine. Now Angular CLI is also installed. For checking the version of Angular CLI installed, you can access this one using the command ng. So ng version. So ng is for Angular CLI, and you can check the version of Angular CLI using the command ng version. So the next step is to create an Angular project using Angular CLI. For that, wherever you want to create a project, go to that folder. So I'm going to create a new project inside the Angular folder. So from there, you can open a terminal. Then you can type ng new, then the project name. So my project name is Angular/PrimeNG/app, and also I'm going to use the routing. So because of that, I'm giving a flag called routing. So it will ask for some questions. You can answer that. Then it will install some packages. So I'm going to use CSS here. So the installation is done. The next thing is like you can go to the project we have created now. So it will be cd, then Angular PrimeNG-app. So once we go to this Angular PrimeNG app, you can open, if you want to open this code in any Visual Studio Code, you can give the command code dot. Then it will open the Visual Studio Code with our project which we have created now. We will run this application in the browser and see whether how it looks. Okay. So for that, you can press Ctrl backtick on the Windows machine, and you can add the command ng-serve for opening this application in the browser under the port 4200. So if you want to automatically open in the browser, you can give the command -open. So it is compiled successfully and it is opening on localhost 4200, and you can see some content there, right? So whatever the content displayed in the browser which is coming from the app.component.html. So you can clear all the content and simply give div hello world. Once you press save button, the browser will refresh automatically and it will update the content. So we don't need to hard reload it. Okay. So project installation is done. So our next step is we have to install PrimeNG, Primeicons and PrimeFlex. For that, you can again open the terminal and click on a new terminal. And you can give the command npm install. If you want to install multiple packages, you can separate it by space PrimeNG, then Primeicons is for adding the icons, and PrimeFlex is for adding the CSS class. So we don't have to write the CSS manually. By default, PrimeFlex will provide lots of useful CSS. We can use that instead of manually writing it. Go to the angular.json file, and under the style section, you have to provide the node modules of the themes and the PrimeNG minified CSS and the PrimeFlex. See, this needs to be done. And then what you have to do, in order to add the icons, you go to the style.css file and you can give the import statement of the Primeicons. Once all this step is done, make sure you exit the application which is already running. So I am just exiting the application and then reserve. So ng serve -- open. Now it is open. The next is we are going to create the required components. So in order to create a login components inside the app folder, I am going to use the Angular CLI. So if you want to create a new component, you can use ng, g for generate, c for component, and I'm going to create a login component inside the components folder. So I'm giving components /login. So it will create a folder inside the app, and again it will create a login folder inside the components. You can see here. Next, I'm going to create a register component. So ng, g for generate, c for component, and I'm going to create a components folder. It's already created, so it will create a new folder called register inside the components. So you can see now two components. Okay. The next component is home component. The same procedure, ng, g for generate, c for component, then inside the components folder, that's a home. So it will create another home folder with all the component and CSS file. So our next step is we have to create services file, right? So for that, I'm going to generate service files using Angular CLI, that is ng, g for generate, s for services, and you can mention the folder. So I'm going to create inside the services folder, I'm going to create a service file. So that is auth.service.ts. So just mention auth, then it will create a file named auth.service.ts. Okay. See, service folder is created. So component service folder and auth.service.ts file and the spec file is generated. Similar way, we are also, since we are using the login form and the register form and the home page, we have to use the guards. Okay. So I'm going to create using Angular CLI. So ng, g for generate, g for guards, and I'm going to create a folder guards, and inside again I'm creating auth guards. Okay. So just giving a name auth, then automatically it will create the files for that. So it is asking which guard you have to activate. So for normally login, we are using the CanActivate guard. So I am adding CanActivate, sorry, enter here. So it will create auth.guard.spec file and auth.guard.ts file inside the guards folder. Okay. Next is I'm going to create interfaces. So we are using the TypeScript. So in order to use the login and the component form, sometimes we have to declare the structure of the object, or structure of the variable or object. So for that, I'm going to create an interface. So for that, ng, g for generate, I for interface, and interfaces folder I'm creating, and inside that auth. So if you create interfaces /auth, you can here see auth.ts file will get generated with export interface auth. Okay. So our component guard, services and interfaces is created. Our next step is, while user enters /login in the browser, you have to navigate to the login component. When you user enters /register, you have to go to register, and the similar way the home component as well. Okay. So for that, once all the folder structure has been created, you can go to routing module.ts file. So here you can see a roots array. In that we will mention an object. Okay. So I will tell if the user enter the path login, then I have to navigate to the login component which we have now created. Okay, login component. So this is one object. Similar way, you have to mention if the path is register, then you have to load register component. Okay. Then if the path is home, then you have to load the home component. And if user, and also we are telling if the user types, for example, if it loads on localhost 4200, if user is not typing login, register or home after the slash, to which URL we have to navigate. So path, if the path is empty, then by default we are telling we are redirecting to the home URL and we are matching the path as a full. The similar way, sorry, it should be in a string. In the similar way, you can also mention if the path is, star, that means something else other than login, register or home, you should have to load the, the no data found or no page found component. So I'm not creating that for now. I'm just going with this parts and the components. So this is done. So we are telling everything. If your user enters this path, you have to load this component, right? Then where we load this component is the next question. For that, you can go to app.component.html. Maybe you have a header in your application. Now I'm not creating any header. So I'm telling whatever the login component, register component, home component based on the URL user enters, I have to load all this component inside this div. Okay. So for that, you can give router outlet. If you are giving router outlet here, if user enters login in the browser, the login component will get replaced here. Okay. If the user enter home, the home component will get replaced here. Okay. This is how the router outlets and the components getting loaded automatically here. Now let's start. We can check all the components and the routing is working fine or not. Okay. So by default, when you create a home component, you can see there is a tag just simply saying home works. The similar way, login works and register work. Okay. So I already running my application here and go to the browser and you can see if I type home, the home works, right? So why it is automatically redirected to home? Initially it was like 4200 and we are also mentioning in the routing file, we are mentioning routing file. If the path is empty, redirect to home, right? So if nothing is entered here, automatically it navigates the home URL. Okay. Then we will tell if user enters a login URL, then login works. That means login component is getting loaded there. So if user enters register, then register components loads here. In this session, I'm going to create a login form. Okay. So before that, we have to write some global CSS. So in you can go to the style.css file and I'm telling for HTML and for body, the height will be 100%. And also if it has any additional margin, I'm making it as a 0. Okay. So that is done. Coming to the login page. Okay. Coming to the login page, I have to create a form first. Okay. So I'm creating a form. Then first you have to add the card component. So go to PrimeNG website. So we are using PrimeNG for everything. So it will be more easy. We don't have to create everything manually. So you can search for the card component and import this one and add in the module. We only have one module. So you can add it in the app.module, add that in the imports array. Then you will get a sample structure. Okay. So here you can see a P card with a header title. So I'm just copying that one and adding it in the, adding inside the form. And let's see whether it is showing. So the P card is showing like that. And we don't need this much width for the P card. So for that, I'm just adding a style here. You can add a style class also that we will refactor later. Now I am just adding the width and I am telling it's a 360px. Okay, and also we have to make this card into vertically and horizontally center. Okay, so for that, in the app.component.html, you can go here and you can tell it's a justify content center. From the PrimeFlex, you will get some built-in CSS. You don't have to write our own CSS. You will get a built-in CSS. So I am writing align items center, means it will center vertically, and you have to give the height of in the whole window width. This login form is align center now. Then go to the login form component.html. You can add the header as login. Then I'm going to create a div class equal to field, adding a label for equal to email. I'm mentioning it's an email. The next thing, we have to add an input element, right? For the input element, you have to import the input component from the PrimeNG. So go to the PrimeNG and search for input element. So input text component, you have to import input text module. So go to the app.module.ts file, add the input text module in the import section. Since input text module is a form element, you have to either use ng model or form control name. That is, either use the forms module or the reactive forms module. Here now I am going to implement the reactive forms module. So whenever you are using any form element, you have to import corresponding reactive forms module or the forms module from the Angular forms. Okay, so I'm using reactive forms module, adding it here. Okay, then go to the HTML file. You will have a sample input box which having a form control name. So here I am adding an input with the text. So my input text, p input text, and form control name, I am telling it as an email. Okay, and I am giving a class which is from the PrimeFlex w full. It should take the full width. And also I am giving the name as the email, and also I am giving the placeholder as type your email. Okay, so once that is done, since we are defining the form control name, we have to add this variable in the TS file. Okay, go to TS file. So we are going to create a form using the form builder, Angular form builder. So I am giving a name as login form. I'm adding a constructor here which will inject the form builder. So FB, and I am adding form builder here. Okay, and here I am going to create a login using the form builder. So this dot FB, which is referred as a form builder here, and FB dot group, and you can add the field name. So my field name is email, which is initially is an empty value. So it is an array which has the initial value. Okay, and I have to tell the validation also as a second array. If it is only one, you don't have to mention an array. So here I'm going to add a validation, validators dot required, and also the validators dot email. Okay, and my second field is password, and the value is empty initially, and it only have a one validator, that is validators dot required. If you want to add, you can add validators dot pattern. So you can mention the password should be like this. It should accept only these characters. Okay, so I created the login form, and I have to add this login form in the login form component, right? So for that, you can mention a form group, and I am giving the name login form here. So whichever the form group you have created, that needs to be added here. Okay, and the form control name email is also added. The similar way, you have to add a password. So a field, then password, then it should be password. Then here it's a text instead of text. It should be a password, right? We are not, you're not supposed to see the characters. Here again changing to password. Type your password. So the two form is done. Okay, the next thing is you have to add a button here. So for adding the button, you have to add the button component. So go to PrimeNG website, search for the button component, add the module. So for that, go to the app.module.ts file, add the module. From here, add it in the imports array, and here you can add the button. So for adding the button, you can see there will be a sample with a P button. So I'm just adding a P button, and I'm telling the label as sign in. I'm giving the style class as W full. So for input element, we can mention the class, and for the P button, we have to mention the style class. Okay, it's based on the component you are using. And also, style class is added. The label is also added. So the button is ready. The next thing is you have to add, if it is not a member, you have to show a link to the register form. Okay, so I'm just giving a div and adding a class and telling margin top is 2. So it's a class from the PrimeFlex, and I'm adding, if it is not a member, then question mark, I'm telling an anchor tag, and in order to add the root, you have to give, instead of href, you have to give the router link here. So it will go to the routing. We have created a routing.ts file, right? So it will go to that URL. So I'm giving register. So if user enters register, it should load to the register component. So if I'm adding a router link as register here, okay. So the form design of the login is done. Okay. Now you can see email, password, then not a member, register. So if I click on the register, it is going to the register form. So register works. Okay. I'm going back, and now we have to do the validation. Now email, if I type something, you have to add the validation. Validation.required is there. The validation is also there, but you have to add a validation message here. Okay. So for that, going here, and we have to add a validation message under this input, right? So I'm giving a small element, and I'm saying ng if. So from the login form, you have to take the control of the email. So either what you can do is, you can see login form dot controls of email dot is dot invalid. Okay, then you have to show some text, something like that you can mention. Here you can add, and again you have to add, these many things, and then it is dirty, or if you say touch the form, so login form dot touched, then you have to mention a div, and I'm telling again, if it is ng if. So the email have two things. One is required error, and one if it is not an email, not a proper email. Okay, so two things are there. So you have to add the two conditions. So it is getting more lengthier, right? So if you want, you can remove from here, and in the component.ts file, what you can do is you can create a function get email, and it is just a function, and it returns this. So it returns this dot login form dot controls of email. So to make HTML more easier to read, more readable, the similar way I'm just adding the password as well. It's not really required, but just for more readable purpose. No, this one you can replace with email. See, so here email.dirty here, also here email.dirty. Okay, and also I'm adding some more conditions. So I'm adding two div, and I'm telling if it is required, email is required. If it is not the email error, then you have to show email should be valid. And also I'm adding a class which is block p error. Okay, the similar way you have to add for the paragraph as well. I'm just adding, so I hope you understood. So under the input, you can add a small password dirty touch, then you have to show password error is required, then password is required. So, and here you can see email should be valid. So if I'm adding at, then dot, the error is going. If it is not added, email is required. So here also, if I removed, password is required. And also I am adding one more condition. if the button is, if the form is invalid, the button should be disabled. So you can give, for the button, you can give a condition disabled equal to our form name as login form dot invalid. So that's it. Now our form is done. Video, I am going to create a register form. So when user clicks on the register or user types on the register in the URL, the register form should load. Okay, so we already created a component file for that. So going to the TS file, the similar way we have created the login component with the login form, with the constructor and the the references to the email and password. The similar way we are going to create for the register form as well. So for that, we have to add a constructor, and I'm importing the form builder. So form builder is imported. Then we are going to create the variable. So register form equal to this dot fb dot group of elements. So my first element is full name, and I'm adding the initial value as empty, and also I'm adding the validation of requires by importing validators dot required, and also I'm adding a pattern here. So I'm telling that the full name should have a characters and a space between. So validators dot pattern of, I can add a regular expression here. So if you Google the regular expression of the full name, you will be able to get that. So I'm just pasting that regular expression here. The similar way, in the before tutorial, we have added the email and password. I'm just adding that one. Then one more field I'm adding is confirm password, and I'm adding it as validators dot required. Okay, so our form is ready. So the next thing is, we have to add the controls for these fields so that validation will be more easier and it will be look more cleaner way. Okay, so for that I'm just adding those like full name. I'm just returning this dot registration form controls full name, then email, password and confirm password, the similar way we have done in the login component. Okay, so once the component part is done, go to the HTML, and if you want, you can copy from this login.html, so it will be more easy. You don't have to type from the scratch. So I'm adding a form group. Instead of the login form, it will be the register form. So the name should be same. Whatever the form we have given here, the name should be the same. Okay, and the header should be register. And first field is the full name. So I'm just copying this div, also creating a new div, and at the field, first one is full name, and you should be make sure the name should be the correct one in the form control name. Okay, so that is added. I'm adding for the name, and please type your name. Okay, so this is also I'm changing to full name. Okay, and once if any error occurs, so the full name have a validators dot required and validators dot pattern. Okay, so if the full name is invalid or the full name is dirty and the full name is touched, then we have to show the error. So first error is required error, full name errors dot required, then we have to show name as required. And if the full name dot errors dot pattern, so we have added here a pattern validation. So you can add here pattern, then you can tell enter a valid name. Okay, so the full name is done. So as we done similar before in the login form, the email we don't have to change anything. Okay, so email is fine and the password is fine, and we have to add another one is confirm password. So I'm copying this one again, and you can see here confirm password is similar way of the password, so only validation is required. So you can give confirm password here, confirm space password, then here the type is password, and the form control name is confirm password, name is confirm password, and the placeholder is also I can mention as confirm password. Here you can mention it's the invalid, dirty, touched, and if it has a required, you can tell confirm the password, and in the button you can change the label to register. Okay, and instead of the login form, you can mention register form dot invalid, and here I'm just changing a text like already a member. Then the router link should be to the login page and the text should be the login. So that's all. So we have done the HTML part and the TS file part. Go to the page, you can see it's simple. So register with the full name, email, password and confirm password. By default, the button is disabled, and if it is already a member, it should go to the login page. If it is a login, you can go to the register page as well. And you can check the validation. If I'm not typing any validation, it is showing name is required. And if I am adding some special characters, it is showing the pattern validation, what that is, enter a valid name. Similar way we have implemented the email and password. It will check email should be valid, or it will check email is required, the password and the confirm password. So our register form is complete now. In this session, we are going to create a custom validator in Angular for password and confirm password. So if it has any mismatch, we should throw an error, or it should not throw an error. Okay, this is we are going to implement in this video. So get into the code. In the previous video, we already created a register form. And now we are going to create a custom validator with the password and confirm password. Since it depends on multiple fields, we have to tell a validators, and you have to create a validator. So I'm just giving a name for the validator as the password match validator. Now we are going to create a function called password match validator. So I'm not going to create that function directly in the component. Instead, I'm going to create a folder which is shared and giving a name password match dot directive dot ts file. In that, I'm going to create a function and giving the same name which we have added in the component.ts file, and we are mentioning it is a validator function and it accepts the control of the form, and the control you have to declare the interface. Okay, so it has an abstract control interface, abstract control from the Angular forms, and this function either returns an error or it returns null if there is no error. So it returns validation errors or it returns null. Okay, and here then I'm going to take the password first. So you can access the password using the control dot get of password. So this field should exactly match with the name of this one. Okay, so we are taking from that values from that form. Then confirm password equal to control dot get of the same name. I'm just copying from here. Okay, then if user doesn't types on the password or doesn't touch at all, then we should not show this validation. So confirm password, then it should return null. Okay, then return if the password dot value equal to confirm password dot value. If both are equal, we should not throw any error. So you can return null. Else you can throw an error, and the error name is like a required email pattern, right? So we can for the min length, max length. So that's the key. Okay, so you can create a key here and telling a password mismatch. So you can give any name. Okay, and I'm giving true. So whenever this error comes, this variable, this key should be true. Okay, so the error is done. We have to import by pressing control dot. It will ask for the quick fix. So auto import, we can do auto import. So once we added the password match validator, going to the HTML, we have to show the error message when the confirm password and the password doesn't matches. Since this error is not belongs to any of the particular field, I'm not going to create under this element. Instead, separately, I'm going to create another small tag with a class, and I'm telling if the register form dot errors having this password mismatch error and the confirm password and the password is valid. Otherwise, if I type empty, also this error will, if I didn't type anything at all, the error will be shown. So we have to avoid that. So I'm just telling confirm password and password is valid, but whatever they have typed, there is a mismatch. Then we have to show a password should match. So going to the application, here you can see I'm just typing 1, 2, 3, 4 here, and here 1, 2, 3. Then it's showing password should match. So if I removing a 4 from here, you can see the error is not longer there. So this is how we implement the password mismatch. And if I type, so the register button is enabled, but if I type a new password, the register button again got disabled. I will install the JSON server for mocking the API and will complete the register and login form. So let's get started. For installing the JSON server, you can go to the JSON server website and you will get the command for installing it. So you can see npm install -g JSON server for globally installing. So copy that command and add it in your terminal. In my machine, it is already installed. After that, you can create a new file called db.json. And I'm creating a users since it is a login and register form and making it as an empty array. So after that, you can give the command JSON server watch db.json. So open a new terminal and give the command watch db.json. So the backend fake API is available under localhost 3000 and we will get all the users in this URL. So if you copy this one and paste it in the browser, you will be able to see the data. Now there is no data. So first we will complete the register form and it will insert the data into those users from the code. So first we will start with the service file. We already created a service file under the services folder, which is auth.service.cs. So in order to use a service, we have to import the HTTP client module. So go to app.module.ts file and import HTTP client module. So I'm importing HTTP client module and adding it in the imports array. Then go to auth.service file, refer that one using HTTP. Then I'm importing HTTP client. Here I'm adding a function called register user and it will accept user details. And we have to explain the structure of the user details using the interface. So for that, we already created an interface file. In the auth.ts file, instead of auth, I'm giving it as a user and I'm telling the structure. It has an ID and the ID is a string and full name is also a string. Then email is a string and also password a string. So once we declare the interface, you can use that variable here. I'm importing by pressing Ctrl. In Windows machine. So it will accept user details and you have to pass to the backend API, which we have created using the JSON server. So for that, I'm returning this .http.post and I have to add a URL. So our backend API is running on localhost 3000. So I created a base URL and the post, I'm adding this variable, this base URL, then /users. Okay, and we have to pass the post data. So post data is user details. So the register user service is done. Then we have to use this register user in the register component. So going to the register.component file. In the component section, go to register and first in the HTML, you have to do two things. One, you have to make the button as a submit. So type equal to submit. And you have to declare a ng submit here. You have to add a ng submit and a function. I'm telling the submit details. I have to add this function in the TS file. Go to the TS file and create a function. So submit details and we will get the form data by accessing the register form. So if you want to see that, console.log of this register form value, it will get all the data which we have filled in the form. So in order to see that, I'm just adding an inspect element and in the console you can see it. Okay, just adding the info here. So some test and the test at gmail.com, adding the password 1234 And if I click on the register, you will get all the values. For passing to the backend, we don't need any confirm password. So we can remove that first. So what I'm going to do is, I'm declaring a variable post data, and I'm copying this by destructuring. Then I'm deleting post data.confirm password. So I don't want to pass that data to the backend. Confirm password data is not need to pass to the backend, right? So I'm deleting it. Then I have to call the function which we have returned in the auth service. For that, we have to inject that service in the component. So here in the constructor, I'm going to inject private, and I'm referring a variable, adding the auth service. Then again, control dot in the Windows machine. So it will get imported here. Then you can refer that service. So the service will be this dot auth service dot register user, and we have to pass the post data. So this dot post data. So not this dot, it's a const. So post data, and you have to subscribe. Then you will get a response. You can console whether it is success or not. Or maybe I'm just adding a subscribe, and also error. If it is an error, we have to handle error scenario also. So I'm just adding console dot log of response, and also we have to add, if it is an error scenario, console dot log of error. Okay. So here post data, it is showing error because post data should have an interface user. So I'm just adding the post data as user, and again control dot for auto importing it. Okay, so that is imported. So now we have added register user, and in the service we are passing the data, and it will call the Json fake API, and it will insert that data into the Json we have created recently. Okay, so in the component.ts file, we are doing this just consoling, right? So other than consoling, I'm going to, if it is a success, I'm going to show a toaster, and I am redirecting our page to the login as well. So for that, I have to import the PrimeNG toast service. So going to the PrimeNG website, I'm adding the toast. So importing the toast. So go to app.module.ts file and import the toast. This toast also have some animation, so we have to add the browser animation module also. So browser animation module, and in order to use the toast, if it is only going to use in a one component, you can directly go and add it in the provider. Okay, in the providers of the register component. Now I'm going to add the toaster in the login and the register page. So it is a common one. So I'm going to add the message service. So sorry, I'm going to add a message service here. If you need a detailed video of the toast, you can go and watch another video which I will link in the description. So message service, I'm adding that service should be added in the providers, and the module should be added in the imports array. So for the toaster, we need these three things. Okay, for these three things is added, you can see here in the toast module, and this p toast we need to mention it somewhere. Since it is a common for login and the register, I am going to add it in the HTML section. Okay, somewhere under the router outlet. Once that is added, you can see you can give a toaster. If you toggle the code, you will be able to see the toast. Then in the TypeScript, you have to import the message service. This message service we have imported in the app as a common app.component module.ts file. Okay, so instead of this providers, we have added in the app.module.ts providers. And next one is like we have to inject this message service in our own component. Okay, so for that, go to this file, and here I'm going to inject the message service. So control dot, it will ask for the import option. So it is getting auto imported, and on success, you can show a severity success. Just copy pasting this one here. It is showing message service add success, and the message content is register successfully. And also I'm going to redirect to the login page. In order to redirect to the login page, you have to use a router service. So I'm just trying to format this. So, comma, private router. There is another package called router which can be imported from the Angular router. So that is imported, and from here if you want to show or redirect to the login page, this .router.navigate, then you can mention the URL. So I have to navigate to the login page. If it is an error, you can show the same message service with the severity as error. So I'm telling error, something went wrong. So our register form is completed. Now we can check how it works. So going to the Angular application, and I am typing test user test1 at gmail.com. I'm adding password 1234, and if I click on the register, it will show register successfully and it is redirected to the login page. So it is success. So in the console also you can see, once I submitted, I got an ID with the password, full name and the email ID which we have created before. We will connect to the backend for the login form as well. So in the code auth.service.ts file, you have to create a service which will accept email, and from the backend we will check that email ID. We have to filter the records which is having this email ID. Okay. So I'm adding get user by email, and I'm getting the email here which is string, and it return this .http dot, it's a get here, and the base URL, this dot base URL slash users. In order to get a user by email ID, you can give like this in the JSON server. Okay, so I am passing question mark email, then equal to $email. So I will get the record which is having the email which we are passing from the login page. Okay, so in order to show what it is returning, we can mention observable which is from the RxJS, and we can tell our user details is returning back. Okay, so here also you can mention the user. This is the interface which we have created before. Okay, so once this is done, go to the login form. So as we done same in the register form, go to the HTML form first and make the button as the submit. So type equal to submit, then you can give ng submit login user. I'm giving a function name as a login user, copying this one and going to the TS file, creating a function. As I mentioned earlier, the login details we will get from the login form by accessing this .login form.value. So I'm taking email and password from this .login form.value. Okay. Okay, once that is done, we will call this dot. Okay, so we have to import the auth service before that. So private injecting auth service here so that we can call the API auth service, and by pressing control dot, it is getting auto imported. Okay, then this dot auth service dot get user by email, then we will pass email as string, then subscribe, we will get a response, and the response is an array, right? So we will check whether if response dot length equal to 1 and or maybe you can say if the response dot length greater than 0 and what is happening here is, okay, we are giving the response as a user. So in the service it is not user, it should be the user array. I forgot about that, because since we are using the JSON server, we are getting an array of data here instead of an object. Okay, so saving, and if the response dot length greater than 0 and response, I am assuming it has only one object, one email. So now it is a dummy JSON, so there is a chance user can enter the same email and password multiple times. Okay, but actually if you have a backend, a proper backend, from the backend it will check and return either an error if there are multiple users with the same email ID and password, or it will restrict during the registration itself. Okay, so here we are using the JSON server, which is a fake one, which we cannot restrict lots of things. So we are going ahead assuming that we only have a one. Okay, so and I'm assuming the response.0.password. So whatever the data we are getting from the API, we will check the password from the data, and we entered one password that is same. If it is same, you can redirect to the which page? Home page. So the similar way which I have added in the register form, you have to import the router. So adding router. So the router is added, it is auto imported, and we can tell this dot router dot navigate to the home page /home. And also, if you want, you can add everything in a session. So once user login with the user login details, we can add a is logged in as a true, something like that, or we can add the email ID in the local storage. So for that you can add, sorry, I'm not using local storage for now, I'm using session storage. So you can either use a local storage or session storage. Session storage will be expired if the tab will be closed. Okay, local storage will be expired only once we clear the local storage. Okay, so session storage dot set item, and I'm telling email of the user is email. Okay, we will save that, and once the login is success, we will pass to home page. If you want to show a toaster here, you can use it. Okay, you can show the toaster login successfully, something like that. Here I am not showing a toaster, instead I will show an error. So if the password is wrong, okay, so there is no such users having the same password, I can show a toaster, right? So for that I have to import the message service. So I have to inject the message service here. So private message. So just formatting this one before. Okay. Private message service from the PrimeNG API. Okay, that is added, and whatever we have added for the login page, so I'm just copying it to avoid the typing. Sorry. Coming to the TS file, else message service, so it is MSG service, and error, so you can mention email or password is wrong, or if it is an error, if the API is returning an error, you can add this, add error, something went wrong. Okay, so let's see how it works. So going to the PrimeNG, and now if you want to see the existing user ID, so in the db.json you can see the test email ID and the password is 1234. So if I am giving, so first we will type something wrong, so @.com 1234 sign in. So email or password is wrong, it is showing something like that. So here I will change test1.email, then sign in. You can see it is redirecting to the home page. I'm going to implement a logout button and the functionality inside the home component. So I'm not adding any styles right now. I'm simply adding a logout button. So having sign out and on click, I'm calling a function a logout. And in the TS file, I'm going to implement a function which is logout. On login time, you can see I'm adding a session storage. So I'm going to clear the session storage here. So since I'm only having one variable in the session storage, I'm clearing everything. Okay. And I'm going to redirect after the logout. We have to redirect from the home page to the login page. For redirection purpose, we have to inject the router first. So private router, then I have to import the router from Angular router. Okay. So then you can access this dot router dot navigate, and in an array you can mention to which URL you have to redirect. So after login, so after logout, it is redirecting to the login. So you can see in the inspect element, if I type, if you want to see the session storage, go to the application and you can see here session storage. So I'm typing the mail test1@gmail.com, which I have registered previously, and I'm adding the password. On sign in, that session storage have an email, and on sign out, the session will be cleared and no data, it is redirecting to the login page. The next thing is we have to implement a CanActivate guard. Why we need a guard? Okay, so now you can see I have logout from this application. I am not supposed to access the home page without login. If you try the URL directly, you can see the home page is able to access for me. So we have to avoid this. So in order to do that, for the roots, we can implement a guards. Okay, so for that, we already created a guard here. So initial video, I created a guard using Angular CLI and it has this function. So if the session storage has the email, we will return true, else we will navigate to the login page if user trying to access home page without login. Okay. So for that, we have to first check session storage, get email is there, then we'll return true, else in order to navigate to login page, we have a router. So we have to inject router first. So router equal to, first you have to import the inject from Angular core, and we have to import the router from Angular router. Then as I mentioned before in the home.component.ts for logout, you have to add router.navigate. Then the URL needs to be added. So login. If user is trying to access any page other than the login or register, we have to redirect to the login page if there is no session available. Since the auth card only accepts a boolean or the URL tree, you have to return router.navigate. Save, and you have to add this auth card in all the components other than login and register. So going to app.routing module.ts file, we only have one component, right? Home component. So now we are adding here CanActivate, then auth card. This auth card CanActivate function need to be imported. So if you press the control dot, it will ask for the auto import. Okay. So now auth card is done. Let's see how it works. So I have reserved the application again behind the scene. I'm trying to access the home page. Now it is logged out, trying to access the home page. It is getting redirecting to the login page. You can see it is redirecting to the login page. And after test 1, I'm adding the password. After logging in, now you will be able to see the home page. After sign out, if you try to access the login again, it is redirecting to the login page.